Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com. Hi, my name is Divya. Before you get to today's show, I've got a quick favour to ask. If you've been enjoying our conversations, I'd love if you could take just 1 minute to leave us a review on the platform that you're listening to us on and share our work to friends and family. It helps us out a lot. Word of mouth is the primary way that we grow. Thanks for your continued support.
For my next guest on the show, I'm privileged to have an incredible journalist, Dale Elliott, all the way from the once paradise island called Saint Lucia. Now, as many of you would know, we've covered St. Lucia in the past on the platform, really looking at the ideas of national identity, but also tackling some of the key discussions around the value chains that it's creating across the Caribbean. But in this episode, we're going to take a deeper dive into the unknown stories that are really defining the country in the last couple of years. A short story about Dale. Dale not only is a seasoned journalist there, but he also runs a very prominent platform on YouTube, which he'll tell you more about. And he has been at the front run of uncovering some of the most disturbing aspects in St. Lucia, but also fighting for justice for the local population as well. So without further ado, Dale, it is my pleasure to have you on the show. Are you there, Dale?
I'm right here.
Yeah, good. It's my pleasure to have you on the show, Dale. Why don't you tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Thank you very much for having me on your platform. I am a journalist. I came back into journalism in 2011. Was trained in my late teens, early 20s. But of course, I left that because, as we all know, journalism does not have any money. So I went out to have a real life. And in 2011, I came back into the forefront again with a documentary series that I incidentally started 26 years ago, but I revived it in 2011. Series is called Untold Stories, and it airs in 22 countries in the region, plus New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Canada, and England 6 days a week. We have so far produced about 170 one-hour documentaries, and it spans topics from autism to diabetes, to crime stories. We do a lot of human interest stories about survival against the odds, fishermen who've been lost at sea. We unfortunately have to do some political stuff as well. We've done quite a bit of regional work. We do a lot of work with climate change and post-disaster. We like to be on the ground post-disaster to tell these stories that can help change actions and improve lives and livelihoods.
Now, with some of the stories that you've covered, you mentioned that unfortunately you've had to cover some of the political elements. And I think as journalists, we know that sometimes it is a thankful job, isn't it? We go out there, we put a lot of ourselves in there, but with the hope of creating positive change. Now, some of these stories have redefined the way that people look at policies in St. Lucia and more importantly, reconsider what it means to be a citizen of the nation. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people are having right now about the current administration in St. Lucia? And more importantly, what are some of the stories that are emerging that you feel that the world needs to know more about?
Okay, so misconceptions. I think the new administration is doing the best that they can. Considering the limited resources. Every administration since adult suffrage has had the same challenges. And in reality, they are trying their best. However, there is a challenge with accountability, transparency, and also a cohort of government ministers who run their office, run their arms of government as sometimes their own personal piggy banks. We have found ourselves very sadly at a point where journalists are threatened. We're also at a point where to go against the grain, to speak on behalf of the people, to share an opinion that is contrary to the government propaganda, is to find yourselves in the crosshairs of a particular politician who will dice, slice, malign, threaten, and possibly send hit after you. And that's the country that we live. And it's not just happening to journalists, it is to anybody who takes on the system. So if the government, for example, implements a 2.5% tax for health and safety, and as a nation, we want to debate that. We want to say, this is not the way it's supposed to be done in this particular fashion, this quickly, and there needs to be a greater transparency. Whoever's voice it is calling for greater accountability will be diced in the public. And that's been happening consistently for the last 2 years, 2.5 years.
Have you got examples of this?
There are lots of examples. Let me give you this one. So about a month and a half ago, the parliamentary representative for the city of Castries decided to hold a public meeting, and it was on one of the main streets. And that was done without notification. Normal citizen wrote up on the internet that, hey, y'all are having this meeting, but perhaps y'all could have informed residents who have to use the street that this was going to be blocked. Simple lines, simple discourse on Facebook. On his Thursday night talk show, this politician went downtown on that citizen. And that is just, it's the norm. It has become the norm with no adjustment, no adjustment by central government, no adjustment by the prime minister. It's almost as if the prime minister and his cabinet endorse these sort of actions by what we as St. Lucians now call their bulldog.
And so are you saying that this is an elected official that represents the parliament, that represents the current administration of St. Lucia, who's taking onto social media platforms or media platform to dismantle the concerns of an individual within the country?
Yes, without a doubt.
You're saying it in such a nonchalant way, but is that the norm within a country like St. Lucia, or is this something that we're seeing more of with the new administration?
I think it is becoming, other parliamentarians are becoming emboldened to act this way. Let me give you another example. So for the last 7.5 years, one minister has held a portfolio for infrastructure, upkeep of the roads and so forth. And our roads are in a deplorable state. The transport sector, the minibus association have a president who comes on and says, he speaks on behalf of all his members, and he wants the government to address the road conditions because it is unfair to them to ply their trade, pay their taxes, and have these road conditions. The minister does not address the road conditions, but rather goes on a personal attack on the president of the association, advising him that instead of speaking about the roads, he should speak about his association with young women, his members' associations with women in their community. They should speak out against that. Why are they only speaking about the roads? As a journalist, I thought this was rather distasteful. But as a citizen, I see the writing on the wall and a pattern of behavior by sitting politicians to evade the topics of national interest while homing in on myopic, cheap political points.
Now, when we have a look at the economy of St. Lucia, obviously COVID had a unique impact within the nation itself. Not only did it impact tourism income coming in, but there was a big dash for the local government to find ways to revitalize its economic structure. Alongside that journey, we've also seen the rise of things such as CBI, Citizenship by Investment, which is supposed to be the ability then to inject new forms of capital within the country to help in sense of national prosperity building. Has it worked the way that it should have worked in a country like St. Lucia, especially when people are in dire need at this moment in time?
Okay, that's a really interesting question because I spent almost a year embedded with the Media Institute of the Caribbean, which I am a fellow, working on the Citizenship by Investment documentary called The Prostitution of Patrimony. It's on YouTube. In that documentary, we did an investigation from St. Kitts, that has the oldest CBI program in the world, right down to Grenada. And of course, St. Lucia was the last to come into the CBI game. And speaking about St. Lucia in particular, we're at our infancy in the CBI initiative. Yeah? The monies that are collected, theoretically, there's supposed to be reports that are accessible to the average person. But in reality, because we do not have a Freedom of Information Act, understanding how much money is collected on an annual basis, what that money is directly used for, what amount goes into fees and so forth for the agency that runs the CBI program, who are the citizens, or rather, which countries these citizens emanate from, the policies in place for these citizens to come through customs without being stopped carrying a St. Lucian passport.
Due diligence, yeah.
The due diligence is not done. So let me give you a perfect example. In the case of, let's just look at due diligence. CBI is wholly and solely a sham. It is a way for people to buy a St. Lucian passport to make it to countries that they normally would not have been able to travel to, for example, the Schengen region. So they're not coming to St. Lucia specifically to do business here. It's only a transit. But even being just a transit, if a CBI recipient were to open a bank account in St. Lucia, they are going to go through hell. Because whereas we have made strides to get to the point of offering you a passport, the adjacent services that you need to access is still very difficult because we do not understand the ease of doing business in St. Lucia and the correlating effects. If, for example, somebody from Saudi Arabia were to buy a passport from St. Lucia and they were to travel with their families carrying a St. Lucian passport, I guarantee you they will be stopped. They will definitely be stopped through customs and immigration because there is no standard procedure that says, I'm a bearer of a St. Lucian passport, I have the rights and privileges as every other person. But more importantly, when we speak of the funds that have been received from CBI, I don't think it's St. Lucians, the average St. Lucian, not even me as a journalist can tell you over the last 5 years how much money we've collected and how exactly this money has been spent. The previous Prime Minister explained that this money was being used for to provide a buffer for some of the natural disasters that we've had over the last couple of years. But in reality, the people on the ground are not seeing it.
It's rather shocking, though, when you consider that the economy of St. Lucia is at this moment in time, for all intent purposes, freediving. And nobody knows where the next forms of investment is going to come in. But the one area that has been performing well has been the CBI. And because there is no access to information, the average St. Lucian hasn't seen any change in that. Now, if we continue that forward, there's also been other allegations in the country over the Saint Jude Hospital, which seems to be a blanket case of finances being escaped. And that's been something that's been pushed on from one administration to the other. Dale, you've done an entire documentary series on the St. Jude's Hospital issue. As a sum up, what do you think the international public need to know about it?
I think we put it quite nicely in the third episode. The St. Jude reconstruction project is the most egregious curse against the national purse in the history of St. Lucia. Plain and simple. Every administration has played political football with it, and up until now, we are at now $441 million that's been pledged to this project. A project that started out, the former Prime Minister, Stephenson King, in rebuilding this hospital, he said it would cost $2 million.
$2 million US, by the way? Or...
2 million EC dollars.
EC dollars, okay.
To rebuild the damaged wing in the hospital. Between a year and a half, that had gone up from $2 million to $23 million. He demitted office, and the St. Lucia Labour Party came in under the leadership of Dr. Kenny Anthony. And it went from $23.7 billion to $60 million. And Every couple of months, they would come in and tell you the number of dates that have been changed, and the hospital is definitely going to open in September. It's definitely going to open in January. And this went on for 5 years. I must say, though, that one of the key hallmarks of the disaster that is the St. Jude Hospital is that every prime minister has appointed a contractor who is either sympathetic to his party or a member of his immediate circle. So Stevenson King hired Cyril Donnelly as his main contractor, a man with no experience in hospital design or construction. When the next administration came in, they fired that contractor and they hired their contractor. And that went from $23 million all the way up to $118 million by the time Dr. Anthony demitted office. And the hospital was nowhere near completion. And it was not even near completion, but it was a disaster. It truly was a colossal waste of money, because I carried out the investigations and I also spoke with the parties involved, including the contractors, who spoke of continuous construction and demolition. Building a hospital without clear designs, building a hospital without planning approval, building a hospital without a clear budget. When the Labour Party demitted office in 2016, the bill was at $118 million. And the new administration did attempt to continue the work. But after careful examination of the building, it was deemed unfit for a modern hospital. So an audit was conducted. Needless to say, in my opinion, the audit was a bit of a sham. It's my opinion. After reading the audit, I think I still have it here. Audit was a bit of a sham. Cost taxpayers another $980,000 for this audit for a hospital. What the audit discovered was a series of accounting challenges, technical challenges, engineering challenges. And the government was advised that perhaps the best way to go is the construction of a new hospital. And that administration continued the same errors as the previous administration. Yes, they designed a hospital based on the blueprints of another hospital, which was Cayman City Hospital in the Cayman Islands. And they started work without having full costing of said hospital. And that again, that's where the disaster started. Because now you're building a brand new hospital without enough finance in an effort to complete at least stage 1 of the hospital before the next elections are called. So naturally, there'll be shortcuts, and the hospital was not able, they were not able to complete the hospital by July 2021. Needless to say that the electorate was not going to have that. So they were booted out of office. At the time when they demitted office, that particular hospital was, and this is just from my layman's assessment, that particular hospital was perhaps about 50% complete with all the walls, and the shell of the building was in place. From the engineers' reports and speaking to the contractors and doing our own investigations, it probably would have taken another 2 years or so to complete. The new government, while in opposition, always said that if they came into office, they were not going to go into that new hospital. They were going to go into the old one, the one that was damaged by fire, which was originally built in 1944, essentially making it a 70-90-year-old hospital. They were going to refurbish that old building to have a modern facility. And so they did. So even after a couple $100 million had been spent building a new hospital, they decided to go back into the old hospital. So now we have 2 hospitals sitting next to each other, the new and the old, and the new team have said they're going into the old hospital. And even through our investigations, it is just very, very apparent that that was done because of political expediency and not necessarily because it is the best thing for the country. the Prime Minister will have a lot of brownie points if he is able to complete that hospital before the next general elections. No doubt. But if he does not finish it, I guarantee you he will not be re-elected.
So how much has been spent from the 2 million initial budget? And obviously we can account for inflation, so would expect some type of rise. From 2 million from what was initially there, what is the tag right now as we speak?
$441 million.
So from 2 million to 441 million. Wow. And we thought inflation in the UK was terrible. Dale, moving back onto the government then, is this a case of selective incompetence? Is it a lack of will, or is it a lack of know-how from elected officials? Because if I look at the storyline correctly, you got ministers that are now targeting journalists. You got a government that refuses to have a look at the Freedom of Information Bill. You got a CBI industry that is collecting countless numbers of financial statements coming into the country, but not accurately showcasing where that money is being spent or how it impacts people. What are we missing here? Is it a lack of will? Is it a lack of know-how? Or is this as politics come?
That's a really good question. Every politician acts in the best interest of the politician and his party first. That's a given rule. They will do what is best for the party and their re-election bid first and foremost. If they can suppress information that will shine a spotlight on the inefficiencies, they will go out of their way to do that. The challenges that we face in St. Lucia are no different to any other place in the world. I think, though, that the challenges are acute in that they're repetitive. Every administration has done nearly the same. But now it has taken on a very, very sinister tone, because if at all a spotlight is shone on the ills of this government, or even questions raised about the management of the economy, then journalists and citizens are vilified. The mess up, the nightmare that is St. Jude is a perfect example of putting politics before people. That's it. Putting politics before people. As it relates to the CBI program, it is again lack of information, lack of foresight, and more importantly, if they don't give you the information, you can't question them on the information. So information suppression is a big thing for them. And I'm talking about not just information only. If today I were to ask the director of the CBI program for an interview on the program, its performance, its accounts, and so forth, that would never happen.
Why?
Because there's no accountability. There's no accountability and there's no need to account.
So by those actions from a unit that is being watched by not just the EU, but by the key stakeholders in North America, does it not bring the entire nation into an area of disrepute? Their lack of action to be transparent with their own citizens, how do you think that will be described to the international public?
Again, a really good question. It's a very difficult question to answer. It's a very difficult question to answer. CBI has been shrouded in mystery in nearly all of the islands. St. Kitts has benefited the people of St. Kitts tremendously. Dominica is going through its own set of skullduggery and racket and lack of transparency. St. Lucia is the last of the party. And one would have imagined that we would have learned from all of these countries. But in reality, we haven't. What do? We take corrective measures. When Britain says they threaten countries and say, we're going to put visa restrictions on you because we don't think that you're handling your CBI program properly. and you're flooding us with people at $100,000 that you're benefiting from, not us, and we're not satisfied with your due diligence process. What do? We try to beef up our due diligence and prove to them that, hey, we're following the correct due diligence methods. But in reality, it is just a plaster. Does our country need the CBI money? Absolutely. Absolutely. We need it. Have we survived without it? We have. What's now the dangerous part about the CBI program is when you have foreign agencies acting as sales agents on behalf of the government of St. Lucia, selling resort developments or parts thereof, and offering citizenship within their packages.
So you said selling citizenship within their packages?
Yes, it'll be good to research the Desert Star Holding project. That was a very good example of St. Lucian citizenship, which was to be sold through the Desert Star investment. And the funds go to build a project in St. Lucia. And after the project was built, then the developer would repay the country. Unheard of arrangement, but it went through.
And it sounds like a sovereign-backed guarantee that St. Lucia government should not be in the position to do so. Now, you mentioned something earlier that caught my attention, is saying, can St. Lucia benefit from the CBI funds? Yes, it can. Have we worked without it so far? Yes, we have. So the big question is, the funds have come in. They have come into the country. Where has it gone? And you've also mentioned the word of due diligence. Now, I know the due diligence process on potential candidates is really high. But is there due diligence done on the government infrastructure in place? So, i.e. the CEO of Citizenship by Investment, the staff that's there, the ministers involved, because surely that level of due diligence on the people involved in something highly sensitive should provide comfort to the community, not just internationally, but also locally, knowing that the finances aren't finding themselves in very awkward positions.
Now, in working on this documentary with the Media Institute of the Caribbean, one of the things we discovered for St. Lucia is the appeals process has a ginormous loophole where a citizen, an applicant for citizenship who had been rejected can file an appeal. And if on appeal he is rejected again by the appeals board, can appeal directly to the minister. And the minister can unilaterally grant him citizenship.
Okay, so run me through, because I know if I have a look at this, and this is almost like a jigsaw puzzle coming together. You've had ministers in St. Lucia who have been seen as committing VAT fraud in the United Kingdom. You've had other ministers who before couldn't travel to the US on allegations of smuggling, from what I believe. Am I correct with that assertion?
It wasn't smuggling. The correspondent said that under the section that his visa was revoked, it was that he was associated with or was a known drug trafficker.
Wow. Okay. So you've had another minister who was assertion was associated with the drug trafficking along those lines. And then you've had a new permanent secretary elected who is the direct brother of a minister. And normally permanent secretaries are civil servants. They should be non-political. But that obviously has changed.
But the comical thing...
What am I missing here, Dale? Because you've got... It sounds like the beginning of an awful joke right now. And these people are intimately connected with the only industry that is bringing loads of cash into the nation, and there's no transparency available to show where the cash is going to. Yet you have all these criminal proceedings are up in the air. Would that give you confidence as an international investor or as an international key stakeholder? And likewise, as a citizen of St. Lucia, where your patrimony is out there, your hard work is out there, does that give you comfort of knowing that you voted for the right administration?
Hmm. I think that particular case is comical because the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Economic Development, who is the minister's brother, replaced the outgoing permanent secretary had to leave because he had reached the age of retirement.
Okay, fair enough.
However, the new permanent secretary who replaced him is older than he is.
Okay, and okay, that's in how? Sorry, Dale. I feel like I'm part of a comedy show now. It's gone from bad to increasingly worse. So you had a permanent secretary who's a civil servant. He's forcibly retired because of age. Okay, fine. I understand it. Whether there's a morality issue or not is a different thing. But then to be replaced by somebody who would, in normal circumstances, be seen as a pep, and somebody who's actually, in fact, older than the person who's forcibly retired to come in a position that is of high importance. We're talking about the economic structures of a nation. And has nobody blinkered an eye? Is the general public not upset with that? Or is everybody just now sitting back and just realizing this is the fate of St. Lucia?
Having a mandate like 15 seats to 2 gives you that latitude. Having a parliament with an abbreviated opposition's voice gives you latitude to do these things. Because you can shout and make noise, but it's only 2 of you against 15 other voices. So you don't have the support in parliament, and more importantly, the majority of St. Lucians voted for the sitting government. So whether a lot of the actions taken are deemed right, wrong, or otherwise, lots of times people go along with the narrative that is pushed by the government's propaganda or the government's agenda or the government's public relations people. And the government is very, very good at putting out their point. If they supported you at the polls, they will support you in your actions in national development or their understanding of what your plan is for their national development. So I blame the people in as much as I blame the politicians. The politicians are taking all the leverage they can because of their mandate. That's simple.
Moving forward, as a journalist sitting in St. Lucia, obviously you've come under fire by the current administration. And as you said, we spoke before, there's been a particular minister who allegedly has been attacking you online as well for your work. Now, the role of journalism is becoming more apparent across the globe as being very important. It's a fourth pillar of democracy of any nation. It provides a voice, an impartial voice that allows not only the general public, but the international community to know what is really taking place in the country. Dale, do you have concerns for the future of the nation?
I do. I am particularly concerned about the noise, threats, discord being created on a weekly basis is from one government minister who, in reality, as he was in the previous administration, wields a lot of power. So let's start from the beginning. This particular minister was a lawyer who was known for taking on a lot of drug cases. So he made lots of money from getting drug dealers off the various charges. He made lots of money from getting them to pay fines instead of incarceration. Lots of money. That was his early life. And he gained the reputation as the drug dealer's favorite person. He also gained a reputation as being a shrewd, borderline ruthless lawyer. He transitioned into an independent candidate running for the city of Castries, because at the time, the party that he wanted to run for was not crazy about being associated with him because of his antics. He was very, very close to the underworld, very close to the underworld. He came into the fold as a member of the United Workers' Party, and he was just as ruthless, just as outspoken. After the fourth year in government, his visa was revoked by the United States. But before that, before his visa was revoked, the fourth or fifth year before his visa was revoked, there was an operation called, a crime operation called Operation Restore Confidence. And that is where the government of St. Lucia decided to go on the offensive with criminals. The Prime Minister famously said that criminals will have no place to hide, no place of refuge. They will be hunted down and brought in, and they will be dealt with. And in a matter of months, 12 people were killed at the hands of the police, the highest number in any given period in any country per capita in the world. The leader of the opposition then came out and said that he had a list surfaced with the names of known criminals, known and suspected criminals, and the opposition leader qualified that list as a hit list, said the police were targeting these people. Now, to be fair, quite a few people from that list were killed by the police. The theory goes that the current minister, Richard Frederick, who was then the Minister of Housing, was acting as the pseudo-minister of national security. And it is during that time that several orders were given by police high command, albeit government officials, and a series of killings were done, including known associates to that particular government minister. The CARICOM impacts came in to deal with the fallout because the US put sanctions from the ley law on St. Lucia. They stopped funding the police. They suspended the visa of the minister and the police officer who was in charge of the operations, Moses Charles. The impacts report tells a very, very sordid story of the events during that time and the role of said minister in these events. It tells the story of the killing of Reginald Jean, aka Ronald Sylvester, aka Beige, who was, many say, the right-hand man of that particular minister. Reginald Jean had earned a reputation as a hitman. Before his death, he appeared on a Radio 100 program with the minister. And the minister was trying to get him to change his ways, to reintegrate into society. Yes? But the fears, albeit the allegations, were that this particular hitman had done several jobs for the minister. And during Operation Restore Confidence, it was the moment to get rid of that hitman. And so the squad that were gathered to handle this, they executed him.
And this is in the impacts statement you mentioned, so in the paperwork there. So this is validated not only within St. Lucia, but also by the US, because I know the US were majorly concerned in this. Moving forward to the present day, though, Dale, we've seen a spike in crime in St. Lucia. I know that we had a previous guest that came on in the country who spoke about the drug gangs at place down in Castries, the fact that semi-automatics are now being found. Now, St. Lucia, despite its CBI program, has placed itself as a honeymoon destination, and they're looking to attract more tourists. But at the same time, we're seeing huge spikes in crime. What has happened? What has shifted here?
Once again, I start out by saying that every country has crime. Jamaica, that we absolutely love, and is defined as a holiday paradise, as the murder capital of the world. And the crime is crazy in Jamaica. St. Lucia has its crime like everywhere else, but we are not a failed state in this regard. a lot of the crime that's happening is isolated and district-centric, or be it gang-centric. So there's not a lot of crime, hardly any crime against the tourists. And the automatic weapons, or be it importation of weapons, is something that every country grapples with. The very good thing is that our government have been taking decisive steps to not only bring the perpetrators of these crimes to justice in a very swift manner, but the fines and imprisonment and even the bail conditions for people held with firearms has changed. And hopefully that we should see a dramatic decrease in it. But crime is something that every administration will have to deal with.
It has been an extraordinary conversation. I feel that time still, it's the work that you do is so vitally important. I want to find out more about your work. Where do they go?
Easiest place is YouTube. You type in Untold Stories St. Lucia, and we have from prison breakouts to love stories.
And I think that is what it should be, is the entire episode of the human experience within the world. Dale, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me.